Hey everyone, Thyworm here with yet another Wolcen video, this time giving you my feedback on the latest patch called Endgame. I made an extensive Endgame guide, I made a build guide, but now it's time to reflect on all the new content that was added and give you my thoughts. If you enjoy ARPG content, I happen to make ARPG content, such as this video, guides, opinion pieces, some context, a build or two, so subscribe if you're into that. I appreciate it. Overall, I think Wolcen Studio did a great job here with this patch. I think all the additions to Endgame make sense, make things much more interesting, more difficult and more enjoyable. My overall take is positive, but it's not all amazing. I will tackle each topic separately, there are timestamps. Before we dive in though, into these new features, and there are many of them, I need to talk about some unpopular but understandable choices the devs made. Any character you had before this patch, which was above level 45, has been de-leveled to level 40. All your gear you had is put in a stash in town, which you can just retrieve, but most likely you can't wear it just yet because you need to be level 60 in order to wear it. And your entire city has been reset too, plus your attributes and passive points. I personally don't mind. I tend to start a new character anyway with patches like this, and I did. But I understand this isn't true for everyone. On the plus side, the devs reduced the XP required to reach max level very significantly, so leveling has become much easier and faster. And they reduced the cost of buildings, so rebuilding your town is much faster. And they increased the drop chance of uniques. They literally drop all over the place all of the time, so it's more exciting to play the game. But still, you do need to re-level and rebuild your character if you want to play an old character. I will also say, and then we're done with the negativity, that this patch has caused more issues for me in terms of bugs and crashes than the game did before this patch. I made a video not too long ago about playing Wolcen in 2023 and basically said you should play or buy this, definitely when the game is on sale. And I still stand behind that message 100%. It's just that this patch, some older bugs and issues seem to have returned. People are losing progress in offline mode, which is pretty bad. There are crashes, small UI bugs and disconnects. And all of that is sort of game breaking depending on how you define that, but a disconnect on the third floor of an expedition can take away 20 minutes of gameplay, and that feels really bad. They made fixes already and more are coming up, but it is kinda sad to see that the devs are still not capable to release a relatively bug-free patch. I personally didn't have too many issues. I saw a Zizaran video on this patch, he was fine as well, but many others weren't, if you look at the Steam reviews for example. That being said, let's get to the good parts here. Starting with the new chapter, which serves two purposes. One, it introduced a new game mode, I'll get into that soon, and two, it finalizes, sort of at least, the storyline from the campaign. Because after the first 3 chapters, where basically your entire family is turning against you, you will finally get to see how it all happened. Because in the background, there was apparently this evil demon called Ahriman, the Blind Prince, which corrupted the main characters in the narrative and sought power wielded by ancient dragons. Without going too much into the storyline, I feel that chapter 4 has been elegantly interwoven with the other chapters. I'm sure a plot purist can find a few holes here, but Wolcen has hands down one of the best campaigns in any ARPG, I think the best actually, and this new chapter doesn't disappoint either. It features epic cinematics, a somewhat interesting villain, a bit of time loop shenanigans, but most importantly the whole new chapter is very enjoyable and cathartic. With the introduction of Ahriman, there's an explanation for the behavior of characters like Hemlock and Valeria, and more importantly, and this is something I appreciate very much, is that it manages to tie all of the previous expansions and updates together in a single campaign experience. Where previously the whole dragon narrative felt a little weird and tacked on, with chapter 4 the writers managed to combine all of it and make the dragon Oshara and her spawn the main driver behind Ahriman and his plans. Ultimately, he wants the dragon egg to open up another realm or world or portals, and you need to stop him. It's basically your average Marvel movie plotline, right? Don't think about it too much, but on a superficial level it makes sense, it works, and this isn't Hamlet we're watching, it's Hemlock. One detail I enjoyed as well is the ending, which I won't spoil here, but it definitely leaves room for future updates. there's a little bit of mystery left, and the well-established characters we've got to know can definitely make their return to Wolcen once more for another chapter or DLC. In the March development update, the studio stated they're not done yet and that we can expect more updates. Time to talk about the second purpose, the new game mode. Basically, this is a game mode where Ahriman keeps invading Stormfall and it's up to you to stop him. In my endgame guide, I explained in much detail how you do that, so I will skip that. Here, I will just say that I feel the new gameplay loop is a great addition to the endgame. It adds depth, a new boss, new loot, new mechanics, and it gets extremely difficult as well, trying to beat Ahriman at difficulty level 217. He's no joke at that point, and the new challenge is much appreciated. You will need to have an amazing build, construct a bunch of defenses and kill all his lieutenants in order to stand a chance, and even then it's really difficult. So all in all, kudos for coming up with a mode like this, for implementing it properly, and for making endgame more varied, enjoyable and aspirational. Then the new Infinity mode, the highest difficulty level available. Should you manage to reach difficulty level 217, which does require a decent build, you now have the option to unlock an additional tier, Infinity. Here you can spend skulls and you can earn attribute points and passive points. Once again, check my endgame guide for details, but in terms of what I think about this system, I actually think it's super clever and fun. This is a high risk, high reward system and Chris would be proud. You can invest as many skills as you want to get that many attribute points, but you only have one life in these operations. You can't revive 3 times. So, will you gamble with the skulls and your life or take more incremental approaches? Besides, more attribute points and more passive points are of course super strong, and the scaling is in theory infinite. So you can create, in theory, completely busted characters with tons of attributes and passive points, and I can definitely see someone getting like 500 additional attributes and 10 more passive points, as that is the ratio. That's very strong, and I think makes for some super interesting aspirational content that requires a truly broken, busted build. Another feature that has been added, which also adds greatly to the difficulty, is curses and blessings. The higher you go in difficulty level, the more curses you get on your operations, the less blessings you get on your operations, and you get fewer revives as well. The good part of this new feature is that it automatically applies these modifiers, where previously you had to pay 2500 gold for each of them. So you're saving money and you're reaping the benefits of a bunch of loot multipliers. The bad thing, in my opinion, is how limited they are. There are only 5 of each, 5 curses, 5 blessings, which makes that you constantly have the same ones on your operations. It makes the operations more challenging because most of the operations simply put AoE attacks everywhere. The blessings are equally strong, so it makes up for it to some extent. It's just that in order to beat high difficulty levels, you will have to put up with these curses. There's no way around it, so you better choose a build that can do that. If you want a build that destroys endgame, I recommend my own minion build. It's very solid still in this patch. I reached the highest difficulty level with it once again. The only feedback I have here is that it would be nice to design more curses and blessings for some variety. But otherwise, I like the new feature. Let's talk about city building. There is one new building which you require for the Ahriman gameplay loop. I discussed that thing in my endgame guide, but essentially you're building defenses with it against his attacks and troops. And then there are new projects in the dark market, which lets you buy a unique up to a level 80 unique. Those are incredibly strong and incredibly expensive. They cost 650,000 gold. But as soon as you have unlocked all of your buildings, which will take you around, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours or so, you can buy these uniques often, probably around 4 per hour. So it's an amazing source for unique farming. Wolcen updated their loot as well. Ahriman and his lieutenants drop specific items with certain affixes, stuff like max health, summon max health, ailment damage or all attributes. Very strong affixes overall, but of course total RNG as per usual. And they introduced another item type, cosmic items, that have all 3 unique affixes available in the game, meaning the ones from Expedition, from Wrath of Saracel and from Ahriman. If you get lucky, you can get a completely broken legendary that will be build enabling, and this really merges together the best in terms of itemization. It is interesting, fun, I think incredibly well designed, and always exciting to find such an item to see if you got lucky. They can drop from any monster over level 40, but are often dropped by operation bosses and Ahriman himself. Talking a bit more loot, the game added a bunch of interesting new uniques. I found quite a few because I've been grinding this patch until I felt comfortable making this video and give you an honest take. And of course, the drop rates have been increased significantly, definitely noticeable, and you can buy these things. The new uniques are super fun and once again build enabling. New uniques trigger all sorts of spells when you're hitting or getting hit or when you block an attack. New uniques also allow you to use certain spell types, in particular the Thyworm here, which allows you to use a school of magic, multiplies that magic, and also deals bonus damage of that magic school, such as Frost. And it has variants of all magic schools, which should open up plenty of builds. The game overhauled existing uniques both by buffing them and by creating imbued uniques. Those are basically the same unique we used to have but then on steroids, and they are quite powerful and fun to use. It's a bit like replica uniques from Path of Exile, if you will. Plus, uniques can now have gem sockets too, making them even stronger. The endgame patch brought 2 new skills. I haven't really looked into those or played those, I can't comment too much, but one of them is Iosonic Rain, a barrage attack with guns, daggers or bows. I still don't understand how daggers can shoot projectiles, but you know, don't ask too many questions I suppose. And then there is Inescapable Skirmish, where you summon Alistar Railgunners, and the interesting part here is that you don't require a staff or catalyst to summon them even though they're spells, you just need a melee weapon. Once again, makes absolutely no sense, but hey. Finally, some miscellaneous stuff I want to touch on. There's a new cosmetic armor to unlock. I do really appreciate that about Wolcen, that they make these ridiculously amazing looking armors and then don't sell them for real money, but instead make you earn them in-game, like it should be. Uber bosses are available for Lambak and Oshara. You could already fight those, but only at level 120, which you outscaled quite fast. Now they got their difficulty bumped up to 217, so they should be a challenge. Not sure if it's worth doing from a min-max perspective, as it doesn't provide much in terms of rewards and an operation is much more valuable, but it is nice niche content. And a whole bunch of enemies got added to the game, 20 in total. Furthermore, two-handed items like bows and two-handed weapons were reworked. Their implicits now have increased damage on them, but also reduced attack and cast speed. Not sure this is going to change much because they were underpowered compared to smaller one-handers, but you know, I'll leave that up for debate. It isn't something that I worry about too much personally. I think it's time to draw a conclusion, and I'm gonna use the Thyworm video I spoke about earlier. Thyworm, in his assessment of Wolcen Endgame patch, didn't recommend it. He played 25 hours, somehow spent 20 hours of that in the campaign and then played a bit of endgame. I basically spent 5, maybe 10 hours in the campaign, definitely not more. Around 35 hours in endgame, probably more, leveling 2 characters and reaching the max difficulty level, and that was my main focus. You would think that our opinions differ a lot, but it's not really the case. It's fun to see that on most topics we actually agree. He points out some bugs still, some clunky aspects on combat, some animation locking. It is all true, it's all there. And he loved the campaign, the graphics, the combat feel, I think, which is probably why he spent so much time in there. We just value different parts of the game differently, but we do have the same sort of observations. More importantly, ultimately, also he had a great time, he says, just like me. He is, however, of the opinion that Wolcen should be relatively bug-free, while it has game-breaking bugs still, like the progression I mentioned, so he doesn't recommend it, especially not for $30. I recognize what he's saying, and I wouldn't necessarily advise you to pay full price, like I also said in my 2023 review video. Get it on sale, or maybe it's still in your library. I will say though that by now the endgame that Wolcen has at this point is one of the better endgame loops out there, to be honest. It is really a lot of fun. It offers depth, variety, various systems, aspirational content. I've had once more a great time grinding it out, while consuming a bunch of ARPG content like Thyworm's video. But I guess that's how most of us play these games, right? We do our grinding, we watch some YouTube on a second monitor, like that's kind of my favorite pastime if I'm honest. Wolcen Endgame therefore is definitely a reason to buy this game on sale or to reinstall it. You will be surprised to see how fleshed out Endgame really is. So once more guys, buy it on sale, reinstall it, have some fun, because Wolcen is fun these days in 2023, and this patch made the whole game even better. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. See you soon, love you all, bye bye.